Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. There is a very thin line between business and trade and politics and governance. And that's why we have war still raging between Russia and Ukraine, partly blockading the naval routes, the shipping routes at the Baltic Sea. There is war going on now in the Israeli-Hamas conflict, which has spilled over to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, blockading the shipping routes that ply in those directions. Now, these blockades of the shipping routes have greatly affected movements of goods and services from the Far East, China, all the way to Europe and the United States, and also affected the transshipment that comes down to the east coast of Africa all the way to Durban. Now, these are political war. War is basically a political decision, but the impact is far-reaching that it affects the global trade, and thus the world global economy gets a beating. It is therefore important that the right political decisions are made by the political player, the political class, and take into consideration the impact and the negative that it will affect all those countries that are not anywhere near involvement in their conflicts. So it is important that trade becomes a priority consideration when decisions are made at the political class. Now, vessels are taking a longer route to reach the intended destinations, avoiding the Red Sea. They're taking longer routes through the Atlantic, through the Cape of Good Hope. That's increasing their distance by over 4,000 kilometers, or by increasing the sailing days to an extra 15 days. The bottom line is that the cost of freight will spike, will sharply go up, which already is happening right now as we speak. And the bottom line also is that this spike or this rise in the cost of goods as a result of vessels taking longer to reach their destinations will eventually end up at the shelf cost of the products that are being imported. That means the consumer bears the brunt of all this happening in places where they are not involved in any way at all. In East Africa, sometimes it's better when you come home and relate whatever is happening at home against whatever is also happening in the world, in the global stage. Back home, Kenya is slowly sliding into a pariah state within the East African community. Previously, Kenya held a very prestigious position. It was the bond that held together the East African community. It was the hub, it was the financial hub, the economic hub of the region. It was the transport hub of the region. You recall very well, we used to say the gateway to East and Central Africa. East and Central Africa has grown now in terms of other partner states joining the economic bloc, namely Sudan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and the DRC. They've built up a bigger economic bloc that has got about over 200 million consumers. This is a big market that makes it highly competitive to the world commercial and business partners. But as we move and look at the recent happenings at the East African community, then we should start getting worried, very worried indeed, because for one, Kenya is behaving strangely, especially when dealing with East African partner states. We have seen recent happenings, Tanzania, especially on the issues of the airways, the landing of air cargo and air passengers in both Dar es Salaam and Mombasa and Nairobi as well. And now we are also seeing Uganda having taken Kenya to court through a trade dispute at the East African Court of Justice. And now a final decision by Uganda to take a walk away from the port of Mombasa, moving their fuel cargo, which used to be moved through the Kenya pipeline. And there's no clear reason why Kenya would allow such a very important partner to take a walk, losing over $300 million worth of revenue passing through the pipeline. Why would Kenya accept? And what are the forces that are competing to put this Kenya in such a conundrum? It's very difficult to explain, especially after the G to J oil deal, which eliminated the Ugandan partner who entirely imported through the Kenya pipeline through the port of Mombasa. Now, Uganda has decided finally to make a decision, and it has now relocated to the port of Dar es Salaam. In my last video, I mentioned that Tanzania has already laid over 100 kilometers of pipeline, which is connecting Dar es Salaam all the way to Uganda. This pipeline project is intended to complete in 2025. That's a year away. Now, as Uganda moves away from the pipeline and we lose all that volumes of cargo passing to the port of Mombasa and all that revenue, then it only means one thing. The people who make decisions at policy level in the government must rethink again. It's not about their own interests that really counts in this situation, but the Republic of Kenya must be taken into consideration when such drastic decisions are made or change of policies are made that will affect the entire nation. Coffee, tea, and trade were being auctioned at the port of Mombasa, both for Uganda, Rwanda, even Tanzania would bring their tea exports for auctioning at the port of Mombasa. That has now changed, and they have literally moved to the port of Dar es Salaam. So there's a new tea auction that is taking place at the port of Dar es Salaam, and therefore all the exports from the region will now be shipped from the port of Dar es Salaam. Like I've said again in the previous videos, what is taking shape now as we speak, and the way Kenya is being isolated within the East African region, and nobody seems to be seeing what is really going on, because very strategic moves are being made by the other partner states in connectivity and linkages that will complete the movement of their goods and services through the port of Dar es Salaam. I have talked about the standard gauge railway from Dar es Salaam to Mwanza through Lake Victoria, and branching off from Tabora to Rwanda, then to Bujumbura and to the DRC. These are long distance electric train that will move with the speed that will be faster than what the standard gauge Kenya railway is doing from Mombasa to Nairobi. And yet the Mombasa to Nairobi standard gauge railway does not even link up to the Great Lakes. It ends up at some place in Naivasha. What informed that decision, only God knows. But let's go back to the electric train that Tanzania is building. Let's go back to the pipeline that Tanzania is building. Let's go back to the new vessel, MV Mwanza, that's now have been commissioned as now plying the routes in Lake Victoria. All these are strategic moves that are slowly picking and taking away all those countries that depended on the port of Mombasa to move their goods through Mombasa, which previously was meant to be short distance to the Great Lakes. Now that short distance has been recovered by Tanzania through speed of the electric train. So where does that leave Kenya, our beloved country? Where does it leave us? First, 30% of that cargo goes to Uganda. All the cargo passing through the port of Mombasa, 30% of it goes through Uganda. Burundi moved to Dar es Salaam quite a long time ago. Rwanda was partly using Mombasa and partly using Dar es Salaam. DRC, the eastern part of DRC has been relying a lot through the port of Mombasa. Now, once all this goes, then Mombasa port will remain simply a local port that only moves local cargo that moves for local consumption in Mombasa. That means, on estimate, the cargo of passing through the port of Mombasa will move from 1.6 as it is now to less than 700,000 TEUs that will be moving through the port of Mombasa. Kenya government must now sit up and look at what's happening. They must stop playing politics. Politics cannot be what we eat every day, what we sleep every day, we dream every day. We must stop politicking and take this country to where the forefathers placed it and continue with the trajectory of moving or remaining in the third world, or not in the third world, but in the middle income country. We cannot continue if every day policies are changed to affect our business partners, and moving away. I mentioned again in the last video that Kenya, after having signed the European Union trade deal with Kenya against the wishes of the East African community, then it literally cut off the links of Kenya with its many years partner brothers. Tulikuwa tunajiita mandugu. Uganda na Tanzania walikuwa mandugu. But we are not ndugu anymore. Uganda looks at Kenya suspiciously. Kenyans are not honest. They don't play. They've got dangerous cards under the table. Tanzania, Mama Suluhu is silent, but she's making so much strategic moves that should scare the Kenyans wherever they are. Kenyan strategic managers in this government sit up and look what's happening in Tanzania. The infrastructure projects that are going on in Tanzania are meant to alienate Kenya from the entire East African economic bloc. Remember, Tanzania is still a member of the Southern African Development Commission, the SADC, which has got a bigger and powerful economy than the East African community. So it will be easier for the Tanzania to drag all the other East African partner states into that bloc that is supported from South Africa. And remember, the Cape Cairo Trans Highway is there. Yeah, the Central Corridor is now very active, combining with Zambia and Malawi. And when you combine Zambia and Malawi, then you are actually at the doorstep of South Africa or the SADC. So this video is just to highlight and bring to attention what is literally going on out there that is going to mess up this country. And it will take years for this country to regain its footing and start the momentum that seems to be stalling as we speak. This is Off Doc Services. Please subscribe, like, and share so that we can reach a bigger audience. I've seen so many people are viewing us. They seem to be viewing so many people, but very few are subscribing. We want to encourage you. We want to encourage you to consider subscribing, and so that we can build a bigger audience, so that we can now put in more analysis on the world of shipping and how other factors affect shipping through the port of Mombasa. Thank you very much, and let's meet again in the next video.